Introduction to the Treatise on All Biblical Characters. In the vast tapestry of human history, few texts hold the weight and mystery of the Bible, a collection of stories, laws, prophecies, and lives that have shaped civilizations, stirred hearts, and provoked minds for millennia. Within its pages, we encounter men and women, kings and shepherds, prophets and betrayers, whose choices ripple across time, leaving lessons that speak as vividly today as they did in the ancient world. This treatise on all biblical characters seeks to breathe life into these figures, not as distant icons or mere names etched in sacred text, but as flesh and blood individuals whose triumphs, failures, and struggles mirror our own. Each chapter of this work is dedicated to a single character, crafted with care to weave together the threads of their story, drawn from the Bible and enriched by historical context, cultural nuance, and the whispers of other ancient sources where appropriate. These are not sterile retellings, but vibrant narratives, alive with dialogue, emotion, and the pulse of human conflict. Every chapter unfolds in two parts, a detailed story that immerses the reader in the character's world, and a reflective commentary that probes the depths of their choices, their virtues, their flaws, and the timeless wisdom their lives impart. The stories are grounded in history, with precise attention to the time, place, and cultural currents that shaped each character's journey. From the sun-scorched plains of Eden to the shadowed courts of Jerusalem, from the whispers of divine encounters to the clash of human ambition, these narratives aim to transport the reader into the heart of each moment. The commentary, in turn, is a meditation on the soul of the story, a chance to linger on the motives, the moral weight, and the unspoken lessons of each figure, whether they stand as heroes, villains, or quiet observers in the wings. This treatise is not a mere recounting of Scripture, but an invitation to wrestle with the complexities of human nature. Here, you will meet not only the righteous, but the cunning, the broken, and the scheming, characters whose lives demand that we question, reflect, and grow. What drove Adam to taste the forbidden fruit? What stirred David's heart to both poetry and betrayal? What hidden strength sustained the overlooked figures who shaped history from the shadows? Through their stories, we uncover not only their world, but our own, finding in their choices a mirror for our struggles, a guide for our decisions, and a spark to ignite our understanding of what it means to be human. As you turn these pages, may you find yourself walking alongside these ancient figures, hearing their voices, feeling their dilemmas, and pondering the paths they chose. May their stories challenge you, inspire you, and draw you into a deeper conversation with the past and with yourself.